Sewer William Seal.
Talofa lava, Mr. Speaker, talofa lawa fionga whongwhitalai. Talofa fo'i to the members of this House and acknowledge all of those members who have been able to contribute to Samoa Language Week, le vaiaso le ngana Samoa i ne vaiaso. Whamalo le tapua inga le tātou atunuu Samoa i tuafia o Aotearoa, whamalo fo'i le tapua i le tūmalo mangele. Mr. Speaker, the theme of Samoa Language Week this week is Tautua nei mo so manuia tai au, meaning serve now for a better tomorrow. And whilst Tautua means serve, it also means to be a servant to others. But the operative word here is do it now for a better tomorrow. And I think, sir, that that's quite fitting when we're debating this budget, because we are talking about what this government is doing right now and the ramifications that their actions will have on the future of this country, on the future of our young people, on the future of the next generation of the workforce in Aotearoa, New Zealand. And let me just, whilst the budget promises so much, and we heard Thursday, Friday, Saturday, how this government just enjoyed crowing and shouting from the rooftops about those particular promises. I think, sir, when we start digging a little bit underneath those promises and trying to identify the details of those promises, we find, sir, that they are woefully short of the things that they need to do for a better tomorrow. And I want to say, sir, that they have woefully been short because they ran last year's election, sir, promising us that there will be a surplus this year. They convinced all of us and convinced the New Zealand public that if they returned to government, that we would have a $300 million surplus. That was the promise they made to New Zealanders last election. Well, what do we get? What do we get? Now they're saying, what's in a surplus? What's in a surplus? They're trying to blame us for their deficit. The reality, sir, is a surplus is important because it means it's a sign of an efficient government. It's a sign of an efficient government. It means the government can invest in the future. It means the government can pay off debt. Right now, we're in the hock for $83 billion, paying $10 million in interest. There is no vision for the future, sir, because of the fact that they have failed time and time and time again, 7 years in a row, to achieve that surplus. Every time we try to hold them to account, they say, well, do it next year. They promise them yes, next year. Now, sir, I think the New Zealand public have gotten wind. They now have created a pattern for themselves of making promises that they never intend on delivering on. Empty promises. Let me just give you some example. On Monday, sir, when we talk about the details of this budget and the lack of vision for the future, I spoke in a school assembly in South Auckland on Monday to launch the Samoa Language Week this week. And that school belongs to a cluster of schools called the Auckland Samoan Bilingual Education Cluster. And the principal whispered to me that they were really disappointed. There was nothing in this budget whatsoever to recognise Pacific bilingual language, to recognise the value of Pacific bilingual language to students and the value of the teachers who work in these units. And they said to me, sir, that in the last 4 years, they have been engaging with the Ministry of Education, with this government, to try and get them to recognise the value of Pacific bilingual language. And what do they get, sir? Zilch. Zilch. Nothing. What they did, what this government has done for Pacific bilingual language education, sir, is they cut the resources that these units required. Remember the Tupu series? Remember the Whalaunga journals? They cut the development of that. Not only that, sir, they removed Pacific bilingual education as a goal in the Pacific education plan. So they've removed that, sir, and there is nothing that is in this budget today that gives any hope, any inspiration to the next generation of bilingual students in South Auckland that this government recognises the value of languages. That's a foundation of cultural identity, the foundation of self-respect, of self-responsibility, of self-discipline is in the language. And this government continues to fail to provide. So this budget continues to fail to eliminate the growing inequalities that we face as a country. It continues to fail to recognise and address the housing crisis. It continues, sir, to provide any hope whatsoever to hard-working, ordinary New Zealanders, day in, day out, just doing it tough, struggling to make ends meet. It fails to provide any inspiration that someday, if they work harder, they'll be able to buy a house of their own. That dream has become almost virtually impossible for the low middle income bracket in our communities, sir. It fails to provide any inspiration. The budget did provide some band-aid fixes. These, I call them band-aid fixes, sir, because they provide no long-term solution to the issues that we face today. For example, they crowed about the $25 that they're giving to the beneficiaries. They crowed Thursday, Friday, Saturday. We got sick and tired of them shouting from the rooftop. But when you look underneath it, they say that they are concerned for the poor. But we don't get it now. We have to wait a whole full year to get it. They have to wait till next year to get it. What then happens while we're waiting? Is anything being done to the poor? No. They remain in struggle street. But in the meantime, that paltry $25 a week gets swallowed up by the increases in rent, the increases in petrol prices, the increases in power prices. Woe unto those people, sir, during this winter. It's going to be a cold, cold winter. Sir, the other thing, they think that people on benefits want to be on benefits. They think that people on benefits love that lifestyle. That's not a lifestyle choice. The majority of people on benefits, sir, through economic and social conditions out of their control, find themselves in that. I've never come across somebody on a benefit who dreams of remaining on a benefit. Pacific people don't want handouts. They want a hand up. And sure, they said they were going to try and get people into job. Forcing solo parents when their child is 3 years old into a job that doesn't exist is not a work plan. The best welfare support, sir, for communities who are hard done is to get in jobs, high-value jobs, high-paying jobs, sir. Jobs that can enable them to support and sustain their families, jobs that can enable them to contribute to the community through various activities in schools, etc. So let me just make that point. People don't want your handouts that are short-term band-aid. Yes, it's welcome. Yes, it's welcome by many, but that's because Kiwis generally have a sense that we have an obligation to look after those who are able to help themselves. But to think that you're forcing people, solo parents in particular, to find part-time jobs, show me flexible employers that are willing to work and support those solo parents. Show me them in our community. There are some, but you're expecting every one of them to get into jobs that aren't there without a comprehensive plan to ensure that they get those jobs. So I've heard speakers here say that they're raising incomes. So that is a crock. And that's, that's the softest way I can say that. Flexible industrial laws, fire at will industrial laws, eliminating good faith bargaining are all designed, sir, to drive wages down and keep it low, because that's their mantra. The housing sell-off, sir, Pacific people want to own their own home. They don't want to be renting for the rest of their lives, but it's becoming impossible, sir, under this government. The selling off estate houses that we rushed through this house on Friday and Saturday is not a plan to make housing affordable. How on earth do they intend to create more houses if they're selling off state houses? pushing people into the lines of social housing is not a plan to ensure people have some dignity and are able to achieve sustainability and respect for themselves. But that's what they intend to do, sir. Their plan is to keep the money in the hands of the few and ensure that the rest of New Zealand population continue to wallow in the poverty, the inequalities that they have created, the mess that they've created, because they have failed over and over again to achieve that surplus, which is a sign of efficient government. They are not an efficient government. They are not an efficient government. Doesn't matter what they say, but they are not.